All right. Well, good evening and welcome to what is our third MVP panel, which we are calling Crossroads Conversations, where we are going to break down some of the more recent headlines that are impacting Hoosiers. And we will talk with four of our MADVoters Verified Politicians, or MVPs, really good progressive candidates. So I'm excited for the conversation. It's really good to know that we've got candidates running who are really fighting for the people and fighting for all the things that we want to see changed. So, first of all, for anyone who's not familiar with MADVoters, we are an Indiana nonprofit that is focused on what we call empowering civic engagement. So we want to give people the tools so that they can advocate for themselves, whether that's at the state house where all these candidates are trying to get to, or at the ballot box. And so we have someone's not on mute. I apologize. Katie, that might be you.
Oh, can you?
Yep, got it. Sorry. I'm like, I hear a child in the background, so apologies for that. But so everything that we do at MADVoters, we are a progressive organization, but it's based on our 5 core values of affordable and accessible healthcare, fully funded public education, safe and inclusive communities, people over profits or economic equity, and then of course, everyone's favorite, defending democracy. So it keeps wanting to come off mute. Okay, I will keep muting as we go. So apologies for that. So for anyone who's not familiar, our MVP program, MADVoters Verified Politicians, those are specifically candidates who are running for the state house in Indiana and who are strongly aligned with our progressive policy positions. And additionally, these are candidates who are committed to transparency, accountability, grassroots power. And so if you want to learn more about that program or see all of our MVP candidates, you can visit our website at madvoters.org. And we also have a full voter guide where we have scored all of the state house, the House and the Senate candidates against our values. So if you want to see how any of the candidates stand up and align with our values, you can see that there. So let's go ahead and introduce our panel. So first, we will start with Logan Patberg. He is running for State House District 76, which is down south a bit. It includes Evansville, Mount Vernon, New Harmony, and Poseyville. And he is a lifelong resident of the area and a teacher. So welcome, Logan. And oh my gosh, there must be a river or something. There's a lot of squiggly lines on your map.
Yeah, that's where it runs into
very
Evansville.
Specific voters they were trying to get. Yeah. All right. And then next up we have Joseph, and is it Trost or Trost?
It's Trost. It's the German name.
Okay.
Trost. Yep.
Trost. Okay, got it. So Joseph Trost is running for State House District 52, which includes DeKalb County and parts of Noble and Steuben counties. And Joseph is a concrete construction worker dedicated to uplifting working families. All right, welcome, Joseph. And I think I've seen some of your advertisements where you're even in your work gear. I love to see it. I love to see that.
I do something I call it job site talks, and on my lunch breaks or when I have time, I just off the dome think of like different policies and issues that I know about that I think we ought to do something about. And I think I'm up to maybe 13 or 14 videos. If you get on my social, you can find them. Yeah,
I love that. That's great. That's, each of us has to do what we can.
Doing what I can.
Exactly. That will definitely be a theme tonight. All right, next up we have Wesley Haffenden, and he is a 7th generation Hoosier running in State House District 83, which includes Columbia City, South Whitley, and Southwest Fort Wayne across Whitley and Allen counties. Welcome, Wesley. And then last but not least, our only woman on the panel tonight, Lena, I really should have asked all of these pronunciations. Goffinet. that right? Did I get it?
That is correct.
Oh, excellent. All right. I shouldn't have doubted myself and no one would have known. Lena Goffinet, she's running for House District 74, which is a sprawling rural district across Spencer, Perry, Crawford, Du Bois, and Orange counties, very much in southern Indiana. So got a couple north candidates and a couple south, and so this will be an interesting conversation. We'll hit on a lot of different topics. So first off, we are going to talk about surveillance and the ever-present flock cameras. So last week, the news reported that an IMPD officer had been suspended after allegedly misusing flock license plate readers for personal use, not just once, not just a handful of times, but hundreds of times. And while supporters like IMPD Chief Tanya Terry say that these readers enhance public safety, opponents like our friends at the ACLU point to privacy concerns. The Indy Fraternal Order of Police has called for stronger guardrails on this technology by the Indiana General Assembly this upcoming season. It's kind of like season, right? Crazy season. This upcoming session. So, in your opinion, how should state lawmakers tackle the issue of flock license plate readers? And I will go ahead. We'll do ladies first. Lena, let us know what are your thoughts on these flock cameras that are showing up everywhere?
I'm leaning towards almost needing a warrant to pull the information from those cameras if you have good cause to believe that there's evidence on that you have an active investigation or homicide, that you've got someone who's watching, who is accessing it, what exactly they're accessing, and they're not accessing, just randomly. Well, let's see if my wife got home today at 5 o'clock, and they're watching the cameras go. I think just a kind of like a sign in, just having tracking that who's accessed it, why, and if you've got to have just cause to be doing surveillance on anyone is my take on it. There was just a article about someone who had went from Indiana to another state to get marijuana. They brought it back and they were tracked by the flock cameras. Yes, it's illegal, but what had they done to get Flock's attention? Simply by yes.
Oh wow, that is definitely alarming, and some privacy concerns. Yeah, so I think that sounds like a reasonable legislation to not just let people who happen to have access have a free for all with our data. Logan, what would you add to that? What would you like to see the State House do in terms of these cameras?
Well, in my experience, what I've seen at the door is people are very skeptical of the cameras, and like the incidents, what you just talked about, explains a pretty good example of why. I think people understand, public out there understand that there are legitimate law enforcement uses for the tech, like an Amber Alert. That would be a great use of a flock camera. But going back to that story that you mentioned, because I read on it previous to coming on here, 100 times where this person looked up, a non-law enforcement purposed search for, a license plate or whatever they're looking for. I mean, it seems like there's no oversight. And if we have internal oversight, I don't want it to be a question. We would like it to be dealt with in the same exact manner all around the state. So, we need to take our law enforcement's opinion into account for sure. But folks don't want their information where they've been going, held on to for, indefinitely. And that's where I think play into what Lena said is, maybe something that they thought about may have occurred with that story. So the technology makes it pretty easy to collect info, but that doesn't automatically mean that any person in the government should be able to access it. So strong safeguards. So we make sure that the folks that are accessing, there's an audit log. We know exactly why they went in and accessed the information. able to be FOIA Act, the whole nine. We got to have a higher level of transparency for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And wouldn't it be nice if our Indiana General Assembly would tackle some of these issues proactively instead of rolling out the technology and then thinking about what safeguards we need? So, yeah. Wesley, what would you add when it comes to these flock cameras?
Yeah, I agree with what Logan and Lena said. However, I might take a little bit harder stance on flock. Much like data centers, I think at this point we need to have a moratorium on flock. At this moment, today, I would support a ban on the technology and the way it's being implemented in our state. I don't think that it's unreasonable for folks to be concerned about our government tracking their movements when folks are going to church or going to the doctor or picking their kids up from school. And I think, police should have a warrant. That's, not something we shouldn't just have our license plates being scanned and our movements being tracked. We've seen how the technology can be abused, not just here in Indiana, but we've had dozens of police officers around the country that have stalked ex-romantic partners. Georgia has had dozens of police officers where they've had this issue. And I don't think the answer is to build a better surveillance system. Or to better surveil the surveillance system. I think it's to stop building the database in the first place. Public safety matters, but our personal freedoms matter more. And I don't trust a corporation or our current government to protect our liberties. So at this moment, I would support a ban on flock cameras and similar types of technology in our state.
Yeah, and I think you'd probably have a lot of Hoosiers who would agree with you on that. So we got to get some more people into the state house who will listen to what Hoosiers want, so that we can get some of these things passed. All right, last but not least, Joseph. Agree with everyone? Disagree? What else would you add? Gotta unmute. Sorry. There you go.
Yeah, hello. I would like to see the apparatus dismantled and banned. I view it as a Fourth Amendment violation, so I don't think any kind of camera system that aggregates the data, that's the big point, and that's what makes it the Fourth Amendment violation in my view. It's that it's multiple points, multiple pictures, with the same identifiers on the vehicle. They're able to see routes and routines, and that kind of data is an invasion of privacy. Furthermore, I'd like to see the state legislature enshrine stronger privacy protections in public places. Illinois has a similar law where it has to do with your online identification, and the data that's being compiled that's linked to your online identity. They have privacy protections for that as well. And like, I generally agree with everybody's points here, but I also wanted to point out that I'm concerned about infrastructure of mass surveillance being built in our country, not because I want lawbreakers to be able to get away with more of their crimes, but because of the possibility of this infrastructure being used by a regime that is not interested in the rule of law. We know that at the very least, Customs and Border Protection, as well as ICE, has had a less than stellar record of upholding due process. And the build out of more mass surveillance infrastructure that can be used by a rogue federal agency should be troubling to any person in the United States, citizen or otherwise. And that's, if due process is out of the window, then this becomes a weapon and it can be used against law-abiding citizens. And if there's no due process, then there's no court proceeding to tell whether you've even done a crime. And so I don't like it one bit. And I think it infringes on liberty.
Yeah. A good conversation there. A lot of really good ideas, and let's hope some of those things get discussed at the State House in January when the session kicks off. All right, we're going to switch gears a little bit, and unfortunately, it seems to be like one either scary or just piece of bad news after another. So. A record 38 Indiana school districts are going to place referendums on the ballot this year. And that's coming in the wake of major property tax reform. The law was SEA 1, and it is projected to cut $744 million, so $744 million from schools operating funding over the next few years, which directly impacts transportation, utilities, maintenance. Some school districts have voted to eliminate busing and extracurricular activities in order to cut costs. And property taxes continue to be a top issue going into the elections. While they are a critical source of revenue for public schools and local governments, property taxes have skyrocketed in recent years as housing values have increased. So, and this topic gets a lot of different ideas. So if elected, how would you address the issue of property taxes and funding for those local units like schools that are, now strapped for cash and having to go other places to try to, make up for some of that funding? So let's start with Logan this time. What do you think?
First and foremost, I go, knocking at the doors. We have to acknowledge that property tax, the formula is an issue. People from both sides of the aisle tell me at the doors repeatedly that they pay too much in property taxes. If your assessed value of your home goes up dramatically, that doesn't mean the paycheck went up, at your job to make up that increase. So you'll end up paying considerably more just to stay in a house. And some of our fixed income elderly folks are, they haven't made payments on the house in 20 years, but their property taxes have gone up, double and triple in the same time. So, while I support property tax relief broadly, a couple of years ago, and SEA 1 solved absolutely nothing. That I was a part of a bargaining session after the aftermath of that bill, and it's been absolutely complicated to see where we're going to get all the services from. And we're pretty lucky. Our district has done a great and have been frugal and done a great job. But I think it's Tri Creek. Okay, so Tri Creek in somewhere in northern Indiana was facing such a high, insurmountable deficit that they're going to discontinue bus service in the next couple of years, which is just that's we're cutting off access for kids at that point. And these are going to be kids that what's going to happen when somebody can't get them to school? That kid could fall through the cracks. I know we've made some great strides in our reading scores, but this feels like a step backwards. So to, I guess, address the point, there's got to be more targeted relief, maybe on our owner-occupied homes. On our, our more senior citizens, maybe we have a point where we stop, they stop an increase at a certain time. That's something I've thought about that would make sense. People on fixed incomes, disabled veterans, people like those need that super targeted relief because they're absolutely vulnerable to losing their homes. So, I don't think that by lowering a property tax bill, your school should immediately have to press a referendum afterwards to replace that money. It's like, hey, I'm putting 50 cents in your left pocket, so let's take out $2-3 out the right. So kind of moving the money around.
Yeah, absolutely. And they do kind of some bait and switch, or there's some kind of tricky things behind the scenes. So it seemed like, it's property taxes, so it's residential and people are going to get the benefit. But so much of it went to businesses and their property insurance. And so, everyday Hoosiers were, up to $300 of potential relief.
Up to a $300 credit is what I remember.
Yeah.
But I promise you, at the doors in Vanderburgh County, we've had no one tell me that we've had a decrease.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you don't even feel it, and then the funding has to come from somewhere. So the schools are really hurting. All right, Wesley, we'll go to you next.
Okay. Yeah, this one's a really good question. I have a degree in economics. I also have an MBA, and I don't talk about it very often, but my day job, I am a realtor. I'm not a Trump, so I don't mix my campaign and business, so I really avoid talking about that. But in this instance, I think it's relevant to this question. Um, School funding and housing affordability are really intertwined. The deck is stacked against a person right now who's trying to buy a home in Indiana because home investors are accumulating dozens of homes. I think we should flip the equation. You should have lower property taxes on the home that you live in. We should be protecting homeowners. And if you own dozens of houses, your tax rate should go up. I think folks are afraid to say that. I think anybody that says, hey, we have to just address the tax system, a lot of voters like, oh no, they're going to increase taxes. I am willing to say, hey, I have a job in the housing industry, I have an economics degree, and our current tax system is screwing over homeowners in the state of Indiana. The 123 tax rate system we have now is a gift to speculative investors. Republicans know this. Congress has pushed for reform in the industry, but that bill that just passed did little to solve the issue because it only targeted those that own more than 350 homes. The issue in the market in Indiana is that the We Buy Homes groups are flipping 5 to 20 houses a year and driving up the market. Um, we have to talk about tax reform that helps primary homeowners without hurting our schools. And part of that is acknowledging that taxes are not the only way to fund education. Property taxes. We should be talking about legalizing marijuana, taxing it, and putting that money into our schools. Michigan, Ohio, Illinois, these other states have figured this out, and it's something we're arguing about in 2026. And it's just silly that our money is going to fund schools in Michigan right now. I don't think the answer is telling a family, sorry, your property taxes have to go up because your house appreciated, while someone is sitting on a portfolio of 50 properties in your hometown making bank at their expense. If you own more than 2 homes, I'm running to make sure that you pay your fair share, so that most homeowners will see a property tax reduction. If you have kids in Indiana, I'm running to make sure that your schools are properly funded and that we're paying our teachers professional salaries.
Yeah, excellent. So I'm in Indianapolis, so a little more of a urban situation, but we have, gentrification where you will have a homeowner who's lived there for decades, who, when those property taxes are going up, they're just getting driven out of the neighborhood. And it's that's just what happens, but does it have to? There's certainly some other solutions we could be looking at. So thank you. All right, Joseph, what do you think?
Oh, my button's not working. There we
There
go.
we
We
go.
got it. So I loved Wesley's idea just right off the bat. I didn't think about that, about higher percentages on people who own multiple houses. I like that. What I wanted to add is, so I was looking into, we have the property tax circuit breaker here in Indiana, where you're never going to pay more than 1% of your assessed value on your home. But that doesn't help you if your assessed value keeps going up and there's no caps or any controls on how much your assessed value can go up. So my thought was, what if we had a cap of 2% per year on assessed value? It's 2% or what the rate of inflation is that year. I thought that would help at least slow down these increases in property tax for the working class. And that's actually a policy that they have in California that I thought maybe it'll work here. Florida also has a similar one, and it works okay down there as well. In general, I'm in favor of actually reducing property taxes for working families. I would like to reduce property tax for houses that are claimed on the homestead exemption. That would basically just that would only be your primary residence. And I just wanted to say one thing about Senate Bill 1 here is it hardly cut anything, as was said earlier, it hardly cut anything for regular homeowners. But what it did do is it increased the amount that personal property for business gets taxed from 80,000 to 2 million. I crunched the math on that quick. That's a 2,500% increase. So the giant hole that's been blown in the county budgets is directly from that part of the law. And another little sneaky thing they did in the law is they allowed counties to increase their income tax up to 2.8%. Which they're almost certainly going to be forced to do. And so that's going to cost the median family about almost $1,300 a year. So you save maybe $300 so that you can spend $1,000 or $1,300. It's sneaky. In one of my videos earlier, I thought it was dishonest because they get in front of of Hoosiers and they say, "Oh, we're cutting your taxes," and that's just simply not the case. It's a shell game. They're just moving money around.
Yeah, absolutely. It's almost like they think we're stupid. And we'll just believe anything that they say. But as soon as you start looking into it just completely falls apart. So
they love half truths. I'll tell you that much. Half truths and no context.
Yep. All right, Lena. What are your thoughts when it comes to property taxes and school referenda and all these funding issues?
I truly believe that they're trying to destroy education for the middle class, and for the impoverished children. Knowledge is power. When you know what's going on, you can fight against what's happening. And they like the ignorant. So whether it's them giving money to the private schools or the charter schools and taking that from the public funds, whether it's taking for property taxes so they don't get funding, or removing, grants, those sorts of things. That's the point. That, I think that is one of their targets. So I just wanted to stay that on the record, but I agree with adding marijuana and using that revenue. I also, with $4 billion surplus, education should have been funded before we were putting it in the bank. That is absolutely, it's for Americans to remain competitive in a global market. We have to be educated. I don't know what's happening, but it's almost like we're in the twilight zone where what should be good is bad and what's bad is promoted as good. And I just truly believe that education is one of the biggest attacks against, the citizens by our government, the Indiana government, that we've seen in recent times.
Yeah.
Sorry, kind of somewhat answering your question, but.
Yeah, but you're spot on. And I think people really see that. And there's a couple of calculators out there where you can see, like how much of your school's funding is going to private schools because of the vouchers. And it's alarming. It's alarming. And, we, that's why we support, fully funded public education. And I think, most people, especially like as you get into rural areas, there's not really always an option to go to a private school. And if you're in a rural area and there's no busing to the school, you may not be able to get there. And so, these are real issues that impact Hoosiers. So definitely appreciate your insights on that one. All right. So, we're going to move on to the third topic. And, apologies. It's another, kind of negative one. But, that's what we're dealing with. We'll try to end on a message of hope. So stay tuned. We'll still do that. But All right, so nearly 2,500 Hoosiers with special needs could lose access to therapy and supports through the Medicaid waiver program after the state adopted a new evaluation tool. So most people who qualify for these waivers remain in the program and receive supports for life. But last month, denials soared from less than 1% up to 6%. So hundreds of families are now having to appeal the decision from FSSA. And it's just, these families are already stressed and dealing with a lot. And now, they don't know, whether their family members are going to be able to get the care they need or not. And so it's really pretty terrifying for a lot of families. So how should state lawmakers respond to these Medicaid waiver eligibility cuts? Let's start with Wesley this time.
Yeah, so I'm noticing a pattern of Governor Braun, Chris Judy, my opponent, and our state legislators picking on those in need. It's something that's personal to me. When I first announced I was running, one of the first issues I spoke on was ALS and how our state gutted the ALS funding. And my opponent was part of that, voted to do that. A friend of mine, they're one of my best friends' moms died from ALS, and she was in her early 50s in good health, and just that disease just takes you really quick, like year and a half, 2 years, just you're gone. And I saw what that did to her family, and I saw how, what resources are needed to provide that quality of life. That funding allows people to live with dignity. So, our state legislator already cut that, and now we have 2,500 Hoosiers with disabilities that are suddenly losing Medicaid services. We need to take this seriously. If changing the evaluation system has caused a jump in denials, then we need transparency, an independent review, a meaningful appeals process, and see exactly what's causing, why is this such a large jump? We can't balance Indiana's budget on the back of working families. This is completely out of line. Like the last 20 years has just been systematic dismantling of the protections that take care of working class folks in our state. We've seen what happens when these programs disappear. We saw what happened with the ALS program. One of my highest priorities, if elected, is to restore the funding for the ALS program and to fight for those in Indiana that have the need to be, these services.
That's great. I think there's a lot of families that would be very happy to hear that. All right, we will move on to Joseph next.
Yeah, so this is something that's important to me. I actually received some correspondence from a Republican woman who adopted a disabled child at 4 weeks, shaken baby syndrome, completely reliant on someone to take care of him. And the FSSA has cut the amount of hours that they would pay out for caregiving when this all started from 16. Now they're down to 8. And if you do the hourly, how much people are being paid to take care of these people, it's less than $12 an hour. So we have trouble hiring people, or family members can't afford to get paid that little to take care of these people. And we're talking about the most vulnerable people in our society. And it's, I just would wonder if any of these current legislators who are responsible for this, if they'd like to go meet this family and, tell them to their face that he doesn't need the 16 hours of care that he was previously, approved for. It's unconscionable, frankly. So, and these are the same guys that are cutting state revenue by cutting taxes for business. So we know where the money's going. It's They're balancing the budget. They're cutting taxes for more wealthy individuals, and then they're balancing the budget on the backs of the most vulnerable people in our society. And I guess that's one of the main reasons why I'm even running, because I see I'm just a regular construction worker, and even I can see that we're living in the upside down. What is going on? And what should somebody say about a society that can't even take care of the most vulnerable, who are in that position not because of any decision they made? They did nothing wrong. What would someone say about a society that chooses not to take care of that class of people? Really think about it, because I have, and it's not positive. I don't have a positive view of a society like that. So, we need to get to work. We can find the money. There's there's revenue streams that we can look into. Medical, or not medical marijuana, but legal marijuana is certainly an easy one. We're talking another $150 to maybe $250 million a year in taxation. That doesn't solve the entire problem, but it takes a chunk out. And at this point, for what these families are going through, any little bit extra will do. Will help. But this is a 5-alarm fire for these folks.
Oh, it's absolutely devastating, and it's cruel. And
yeah,
one of the things that we say that we do is just shine a light on what's happening. And so I really appreciate your idea that the lawmakers passing this type of legislation need to go sit with the families and see firsthand, the just horrific impact that these laws are having, and that they're not numbers, they are human beings behind those numbers.
I've got one more point I just thought
Sure.
of. This was in the email also, and I did some research. So they're trying to get them to put the child in and institutionalize them, like in a nursing home or such. But the amount of money that meant, they were fine with a family member taking care of the child and being paid the waiver rate. That was fine. They kept cutting it, but it was okay. But now they're pushing for institutionalization, and the amount of money that Medicaid pays to the institution is 3 times the amount. And so now that brings up, is this privatization again? Are they, and who owns the nursing home or the institution? And is it for profit? I'll almost guarantee you that it is. And so is this just another avenue to funnel taxpayer money to private pockets? That's what it looks like.
Yes. Yes, it certainly does. And it's what are we doing? It's taking our society backwards. It's against what the data tells us is best for these people and their families, and
it's not fiscally
awful.
responsible. It's
not at all.
It's
not at
expensive.
all.
This is
So why?
It's one of those issues where it literally costs us more money as the taxpayer.
Right.
It's a worse outcome for the child. It's a worse outcome for the family. It's worse for everyone.
Yep. Yeah. Oh man, I really hope we get to see some good new faces in the Statehouse. All right, Lena, I will pass it over to you.
I'm a social worker, and what Joseph was saying was correct. They're pushing people into facilities. We have a very bad track record with institutions, and we've got for-profit prisons right now, warehousing a lot of the mentally ill and those with addiction issues. Now we've got those who are disabled, maybe physically, maybe cognitively, maybe it's autism. They're going to take away the ability to live with their home and their communities, put them into facilities that we know historically are underfunded, with staff who are not adequately trained or have the resources to provide care, and they're abused. We have basically human rights violations occurring at those levels. And we are I don't know what happened to the morale, where the morality is with people, that any of this is okay. That mistreating a child, the disabled, those that can't care for themselves would be okay. And in what religion, in what book, in what era is that okay? We are contributing to our own demise by electing these people who could care less what happens to me or you. I've got my fingers crossed that society is going to wake up and see what's happening. And if not, I don't know. I don't know where we're going. And I hate to,
Yeah.
I think I'm not trying to be doom and gloom we're getting there. We're moving that direction every day.
Yeah. Yep. And it is absolutely a moral issue. And I do think it's one of those issues that if you're not directly affected by it, it can be really easy to just FSSA, I don't know what that is, and waivers and just that's not your world. But if you were to knock on someone's door and have a conversation with them about what is actually happening and the impact it's having, I don't know how anyone could think that this is a good idea. And so it's a real opportunity as you're out talking to voters to maybe help them wake up and see what's happening, that we have legislators that are not acting for the good of our society, and are more concerned with, lining, a
Funniest
small
bucket.
number of people's pockets. Yeah.
Right. One more thing
Yeah.
that I was
Sure.
told by provider side of the waivers is that the paperwork required for them when they take an admission over 300 pages. Now,
Wow.
multiply that times however many clients you have, and it has to
Yeah.
be done right, and it has a deadline. If it's
Yeah.
not done right and by the deadline, if they're kicked out, the client loses care. Now, they have put a moratorium on new providers to provide services. So there's a heavier burden on the providers, and they've made it so that how are they going to, reach and provide all of these? They just keep setting up roadblocks to knock people off track. So even if you get approved, you've got providers scrambling to get you in and get all the paperwork done in time. And that's, not a provider being lazy. That's them doing it the right way. So I really wish we had some, common sense social worker and realtor,
Yeah.
the construction worker, the teacher. Put us in there. Let us bring in our experience and what it's like to work with these families and to know what the needs of society is, because they have forgotten all about
Yeah.
us. So
Yeah.
I'll
I
give a
love that. It gives me goosebumps just to even think about getting everyday Hoosiers into the state house, which I think is the way it's supposed to be, right? So yeah. So lots of good stuff there. Logan, I will let you finish us on this conversation.
Yeah, I think after reading through some stories about the cuts and thinking about what's happened in the recent past, the question has to be asked is, did these Hoosiers suddenly need fewer services? And did their families stop needing support? And no, the answer is no. So they changed the process of how you go about the application. So if you change the tool and you're getting dramatically different results, we have to make sure that tool is actually working, because the stats are like a 5-fold increase in denials. That's huge. That's way too big of an increase to assume that the tool's working right. So if it were me, we'd have to pause all denials. Let's make sure that the reductions that are happening are legitimate. Is it because there's some sort of algorithm error, or is it because this is real and legitimate? So what it makes me think of is like the conversation about how Indiana, or the current legislature, is handling services for our disabled folks. Because if you remember, like ABA therapy as an example, they got changed pretty recently, and I know like multiple families that heavily impacted their daily lives. And so, this is just another thing that the legislature has done to folks and not for folks, it feels like. So, I don't want to be attacked, known as somebody that just taxes everyone, spends to our heart's desire. Obviously, we want to control cost. Normal folks always do. But you can't just blanket get rid of medically necessary care and therapies that are working just because you think we don't have the funds for it. So, we have to obviously make sure that we're fixing issues, not just creating new ones.
Yep. And it's, it's not like it's just, a little clerical error. No, these are people's lives. And sometimes it could be the life and death situation, certainly a quality of life issue. It's just, they're too important for us to be getting them wrong like we are. So yes, totally agree. All right. So now we've had our negative session. Now I'm going to give you an opportunity to get some hope sprinkled in for people. So this is sort of the speed round. So try to keep it to a minute, but I'm not gonna time you. So it's the honor system. But I'll just give each of you a chance to just kind of speak freely, whatever you want to let voters know about you. It could be, touching on any of your policy positions, your vision if you get elected, any of your current campaign needs, or just anything that, however you want to spend the 60 seconds, these are yours. So I'm going to start with Joseph on this one.
Hi. All right. My campaign needs volunteers, whether that's canvassing, phone banking, hosting house parties, or texting and calling your friends and family to spread the word. It all helps. We also need donations. Our goal is to raise another $2,000 before October so that we can buy yard signs, more campaign literature, and to do some targeted media advertising, perhaps. If you're interested in learning more about my platform, my website is Trost4district52.com. That's with 52 in numbers, and then Trost 4 District is the just regular English there. Reach out to me there via email or phone. I'd love to hear from you about your issues because I believe representatives should listen. The last thing I want to stress is how important this election cycle is. This is our chance to take our state back and reinvest into our communities. Hoosiers have been told over and over again, if you're not voting Republican, your vote doesn't really count. Indiana has one of the lowest voter turnouts every single election. And so it's time to change that. There are Democrats in rural counties and districts like ours, and we have to start showing up for elections so that we can continue to have free and fair elections in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right, Lena, you are up next.
I would just want people to know that as a social worker, my focus is always the children, vulnerable, the marginalized populations, but also the middle class, the working class, getting resources and money out of Indianapolis into our region for the services that we need for our homes and environments, and to address some of the issues that we have specifically related to like Perry County and Hoosier National Forest. And we still have areas that don't have running water here. Yes. Yeah. And we have some places that cannot get internet service because of a contract with Comcast that's prohibited other companies coming in. So we're kind of like a third world country in certain parts. So addressing some of those needs. Also, my website is www.hoosiersfirst.com. And that's a play on we've got to take care of the well-being and needs of Hoosiers before we place the interests of others, corporations, countries, what have you, ahead of what we need and our support, volunteering, getting the word out, social media, share, whatever you can do. I'd appreciate any algorithm action there. So
Yeah, it all counts. Any conversations, likes, shares, it doesn't cost anything, just your time. It definitely helps. Well, thank you for that. All right, Logan, what would you like voters to know about you?
So my background is I'm a public school teacher, and before that, I spent a decade working in the automotive or agricultural industry, and I think those experiences have shaped how I view the government. So, we've knocked a lot of doors, and most people I talk to are not totally immersed in politics, and what they really want is just someone to look out for them. So their biggest issue is probably their energy bill. There's kids' school. If they're older, are their kids going to be able to afford to stay here and raise a family? And that's just how I feel. The legislature should we need to prioritize regular working Hoosiers at every single junction. So, we can't represent people if you don't ask them or talk to them or ask them what's going on. So I've made it a point to knock thousands upon thousands of doors and get the perspective of folks around me. I don't expect to go to Indianapolis knowing absolutely everything, but we've been showing up. I'm ready to listen. I'm ready to do the work and show up for folks in District 76 because they need somebody in Indianapolis who remembers who sent them there. But to end it, you can visit my Act Blue. We obviously need more funds so we can get out a mailing program in the next couple of months, several weeks actually. And absolutely would love some more volunteers. We have some dedicated folks that knock with us, but we would always love more. And we'd be happy to have you. We send people out in pairs, so you'll never be out alone. So that's it.
That's awesome. And it's fun, right? It's
Absolutely
fun to go have these conversations. You would not think so, but people, it's a very interesting conversation. So if you haven't canvassed, I highly recommend it. And so it sounds like Logan's campaign would be a great introduction to it if people are interested. So thank you. All right, Wesley, you get the last minute.
No pressure. Clearly, I'm Wesley Haffenden, I hope. I'm running for Southwest Fort Wayne and most of Whitley County. I have a degree in economics, an MBA, and a decade of small business experience. I understand how the systems work. I also know what happens when it doesn't work for you. When my dad lost his job during the housing crisis, my family went from getting by to relying on food banks, free school lunch, and the kindness of our neighbors. I've lived what it feels like when stability disappears. That's why I'm running. I don't want to make billionaires richer. I want to make regular Hoosiers a little freer. Living wages, legal weed, an end to corporate welfare like data center subsidies. And I want to stop big government from tracking innocent people with flock cameras. I'm running to build an Indiana where working hard actually gets you somewhere. Our government should work for people who live here, not the corporations that are funding my opponent, and I assume everybody's opponents on this panel. Campaign needs, donations. I'm not taking any corporate money, so small dollar donations are how I'm paying for literature, yard signs, things like that. Volunteers, we are doing weekly phone banking on Wednesdays and canvassing as many days as we possibly can. If it's something that's easy to do, I promise it's not scary. So if you'd like to come join us, we are happy to show you how to do it. You can learn more about me at wesleyhaffenden.com. I've had a lot of success on social media. Gonna toot my own horn here. Trying to translate that into reaching folks where they're at, door to door. A few good videos on Facebook. It's not going to interact with folks that aren't tuned in. So biggest goal right now is to have enough money and volunteers for us to get some flyers out and to get some mailers out so we can connect with more voters.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. This has been, I really love these conversations because as much as it's like, oh my gosh, we have all these like kind of bad topics that we have to talk through, just the idea that there are other people out there who are seeing these things and feel the same way and want to get us back to common sense and actually taking care of each other and elevating the everyday Hoosier and not the billionaires. I just absolutely love to hear it. You guys did good because you actually got each of your campaign websites in, but we like to get them in at the end. So I'm just going to do like the super speed round, and I'll just boom, boom, boom. If you could give it one more time, just so that people have that. So Joseph, what's your campaign website? Oops, gotta get that mute button. Oh,
Okay, www.trost4district52.com. That wasn't supposed to be smart. It's got me flustered, the mute button.
sorry. All right, Wesley, what's yours?
WesleyHaffenden.com.
Excellent. All right, Logan, what's yours?
www.Patberg for Indiana, so FOR, so www.patberg4indiana.com.
Excellent. And Lena, one more time, what's yours?
HoosiersFirst.com.
Oh, I love it. That's a great one. All right. It looks like we do not have any questions in the chat. And so we all get a gold star for finishing 2 minutes early. But I just, want to thank you once again. This was a really great discussion. And as hard as it is, it's uplifting. And so, try to end on a positive note. We'll let everyone know we recorded this, so we will get it posted up on YouTube by tomorrow. So anyone who missed it, feel free to point them there. Of course, if you want to learn more about Mad Voters and the work that we do, you can check us out at our website, madvoters.org, or on social media at Mad Voters. We're pretty much on every site except for the bad place, as I call it. And then we like to plug, you can also from our website download our newly released community conversations and canvassing guide. And with that, we are trying to help just everyday Hoosiers have those conversations with their neighbors and start to, turn things around and start to have a little more civic engagement. And then we also have, as I mentioned at the beginning, our voter guide, where we have graded all of the Statehouse candidates. And then we have just tons of voter information, resources if you want to register, just tons and tons. And if there's any questions that you have civic related, you can reach out to us anytime. So thank you once again. And everyone.
You guys do great
Oh,
work.
thank you.
So,
Thank you. Thank you. All right, everyone have a great evening.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.